Uhuru, and welcome to this week's episode of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement web show. The Uhuru Solidarity Movement is the mass organization of the African People's Solidarity Committee, the organization of mostly white people formed by the African People's Socialist Party as a way to insert the African Revolution into the midst of the white population, the oppressor population, to win as many other white people as possible. White people just like us, just like yourselves, to a stance of reparations and material solidarity with African liberation and self-determination under the leadership of the African working class. And in tonight's episode, we will have the honor of talking about current events today as understood through the lens of African internationalism. And that is the political theory of Chairman Omali Yeshitela and the African People's Socialist Party. And we want to take this moment to salute Chairman Omali Yeshitela, who has led the African People's Socialist Party, the African Socialist International, under the leadership of the African working class for the total and complete liberation of Africa and African people everywhere for 50 years, without whose vision we would not be here. And just want to give a shout out to Chairman Omali Yeshitela and the African People's Socialist Party. Uhuru.
Uhuru.
And we also want to salute Deputy Chair Ona Zene Yeshitela, the on-the-ground leader of the economic work of the African People's Socialist Party for such projects as the Black Power Blueprint, which is taking off in St. Louis, where one of our esteemed guests tonight is reporting from. So we also want to give a really powerful salute to Comrade Deputy Chair Ona Zene Yeshitela of the African People's Socialist Party for her vision and for the day-to-day work that she does, bringing self-determination and economic independence to the African community. Uhuru.
Uhuru.
So today we're going to be helping you to decipher some of the nonsense that we hear coming out continuously from the bourgeois media. And by that we mean any media really that you're going to find on TV, whether it's Fox, whether it's CNN, NBC, and I won't give them any further advertisement than that. But what's really going on with this whole Trump impeachment? And these endless inquiries and hearings that we're seeing that are taking up all the media space. And what's been happening in the meantime in Bolivia and elsewhere in Latin America? How do you tell the difference these days between an uprising and a coup in today's world of an imperialism that is in deep, deep crisis? And what does it all mean for white people who genuinely want to stand with Africans and other oppressed peoples in the struggle for liberation and socialism? So let's discuss all of that. Yeah, I mean, and we're going to discuss all of that and more tonight. And I'm very honored to say that we have on the line the African People's Solidarity Committee Chairwoman, Penny Hess.
Uhuru,
Chairwoman Penny Hess.
Uhuru, Comrade Jamie and Chair Jesse. It's great to be here. I really appreciate this event.
We are really honored to have you with us, and I'm also honored to be joined to my right here by the chair of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement and my co-host tonight, Jesse Nevel. So we are Uhuru. Jesse, welcome. It's great to have you on here again.
Great to be here, James, and always a pleasure to be on with Chairwoman Penny Hess.
Absolutely.
Really looking forward to hearing from you tonight and to be sitting next to the greatest host that we have here at the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, Jamie Simpson.
It's an honor, and I should state that I'm a member of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement and in here as part of the reparations committee of the Black Power Blueprint. So, and we're doing this web show in support of the Black Power Blueprint, which, if you haven't heard about it, is an incredibly positive project that's just exploding in St. Louis with economic development, self-determination for the African working class. You can go out and check the website and see the programs when you donate. And this is a show where we're going to be encouraging you to donate. We always like to raise at least $500 on our web shows, and we intend to do that tonight. If you'd like to get started with that, you can go to blackpowerblueprint.org. Again, that's blackpowerblueprint.org. Now I'm going to turn it over to Comrade Jesse, chair of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement.
Uhuru. All right. So great to be here once again. And just want to start off by saying we planned this web show tonight to have a discussion about the headlines that you see when you look at the news. And between the time that we announced this web show and right now, the Uhuru movement made headlines. So we're really excited about that. And That is, of course, nothing new. The Uhuru movement often makes international news. So right now, the International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement, the mass organization of the African People's Socialist Party, is engaged in a very powerful campaign in St. Louis, Missouri, to stop the construction of the NGA, the National Geospatial Agency, an international U.S. CIA spy agency that is being put down right in the heart of the African community of North St. Louis. And first, we're going to take you to a news story that was aired by Channel 4 in St. Louis, Missouri, with the headline, "North City Residents Worried New NGA Building Will Force Them Out." So let's take a look at this news clip.
The city takes steps tomorrow toward revitalizing North St. Louis, but tonight there's concern it could backfire for some. Good evening, I'm Courtney Bryant.
I'm Steve Savard. In the morning, what tonight is an empty field will start to become the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency headquarters. Not everyone's seeing the vision of that billion-dollar project. News 4's Ashley Lincoln is live at the site near Jefferson and Cass.
Well, Steve and Courtney, in several hours, that groundbreaking is expected to happen just beyond this fence for the NGA project. But tonight, protesters tell us that they have concerns about this project out of fear that it'll force African Americans out of this area. Well, leaders behind this project tell us that's not their intentions.
No way, NGA, our voices will be heard.
Protesting the future.
2, 4, 6, 8, tell the people what we say.
Triggered security to usher out activists from this reception.
Our voices will be heard.
We hope by the time this facility is completed that we will have seen a significant transformation here.
National Geospatial Intelligence Agency stakeholders and St. Louis city leaders mingled with North City residents discussing what's expected for the community after the development of the $1.7 billion site.
And our goal here is to transform the community around it.
But a few steps outside,
Hell no to the NGA.
members with the International People's Democratic Movement said they're against this development.
The whole thing stinks.
Protesters say developers pushed out African American homeowners to make space for the 100-acre site.
But they are scared to today. They don't even have their homes anymore, and they still afraid because of the terror and how they were treated.
They fear once this project is completed, rent will jump up, forcing people out of this area of North City.
The NGA is not going to want to live next to me. And if you can't live next to me, then you don't need to be in my community.
We're working to be sure that we do not displace people here in the neighborhood.
Back in 2017, city leaders took lengths to move this home to a nearby block so the homeowner wouldn't be forced out.
And if there are issues that have been brought up to us, we've tried to address them head on.
Now, despite the groundbreaking, this project is still moving forward. Those protesters tell us that they still plan to be out in this community talking with the community about this situation. Reporting live tonight, Ashley Lincoln, News 4.
Memo to Channel 4. First of all, it's called the International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement. I don't know why they can't. I guess maybe they were like, I can't pronounce it. They left it out. But it's called the Uhuru Movement. So just a little memo to Channel 4. But very powerful coverage. I really want to salute the International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement and President Columbai and everybody who was out there. That was extremely powerful. And although, of course, you see the typical slant of the bourgeois media, the fact that the Uhuru Movement's message was put out and was able to force itself to be heard was very, very powerful. So really want to salute Impeachment and the Uhuru Movement as a whole there in St. Louis. And Chairwoman Penny Hess, you can take us behind the headlines of this case and onto the front lines because you were actually there when that happened and you were there earlier today when a follow-up action was held. So could you, first of all, tell us what is the NGA and why are these actions being carried out in opposition to it?
Uhuru. Well, it's great to be on, and I want to salute Chairman Omali Shatella, who is my leadership, the leadership of the African People's Solidarity Committee, and the leader of the African Revolution in the whole world, and Deputy Chair Onasanea Shatella, who leads the Economic Front of the office and the office of the Deputy Chair, and so much inside of the party, and the leadership of the party. So it's such an honor to be a member of the African People's Solidarity Committee under the leadership of the vanguard and working in the white community to extend the African Revolution onto the pedestal and to win white people to reparations. So I just want to start by saying that this is an incredible struggle. And first of all, the NGA is, although it says NGA, it's the National Geospatial-Intelligence Agency. And it is, they leave out the I there, so, they try to portray it as a friendly kind of agency that is the one that's responsible for GPS and, getting around and all that kind of thing. But in fact, this is a new campus, quote unquote, of the agency, which is called the most secretive of all secret agencies. And, it's related to the CIA and all of the things that carries out. And it's building this new campus on 97 acres of land right in the middle of North St. Louis, in the middle of the African working class community, not far at all, really about 7 or 8 minutes from where the Uhuru House is at 4101 West Florissant. And, it's 97 acres, first of all, but it also includes another 1,000 acres surrounding it that is targeted to be used at some time in the future. And I want to say, first of all, that the NGA is the agency that is responsible for sending drones and what they call precision weapons into the Middle East, drones that can drop bombs on the people of Pakistan, Afghanistan, Iraq, and certainly in Africa and other places, and that, they work on increasing the precision of these weapons. So I think that's really important to note, because if you follow what these drones do, launched by the United States, they kill, they target weddings, that the people are having. They target funerals, hospitals, schools and school buses and children and babies. So they're doing that on purpose because they brag about their precision ability using GPS. So it's bringing this vicious spy agency, first of all, into the middle of the African community. And it's, something that is using a colonized community to attack colonized people around the world. And really is something that's called for the neo-colonial class and others, all the lying politicians of the city have come together to try to win the African community to this, that it's going to bring jobs, that it's going to bring economic development to this neighborhood. And of course, we know that it's rampant gentrification. It's gentrification on steroids, because let me just say first, the NGA already has a campus, or whatever the word is, here on the south side of St. Louis, where 3,000 people are employed, and they're moving up to this north side property into a bigger, something that will be much bigger, and that will employ another 1,500 people. So just like they did in St. Pete with Tropicana Field, where they promised the African community, well, first of all, they stole the land, they promised jobs, and no job ever came. So they did the same thing here. They took this 97 acres, and first of all, this included a public housing project that was called Pruitt-Igoe. And Pruitt-Igoe was the public housing project where the U.S. government in the 50s experimented on the community by spraying it with radioactive chemicals. And that was part of this 97 acres. And so the rest of it was community, basically a predominantly African community on the north side, which is 97% African. And so all of those houses, it was 47 houses that were there that were torn down except for one. And it was an African woman, Miss Taylor, who has been to the Uhuru House, who fought them and forced them to move the house. You can see that in the video where they're moving that house. Like the guy's saying, oh, we're not going to displace anybody. Well, they've already displaced all these people, and it shows that. And so this was the equivalent. This was 47 houses where 200 people lived, forced off of that land. And some of the families, African families, had houses there for generations, just like the story in St. Pete. It was an African community, and it was a very viable and important African community. So that is the first thing, where the Africans have been forced off their land. Now, the NGA, like I said, also owns another 1,000 acres. So slowly, one by one, they're going to be pushing all the other African families out. I mean, it's really a serious thing. And they're promising jobs, but you have to have a top-level security clearance to work there. And 90% of the African community does not have that because of the colonial attack on them, the counterinsurgency, this mass incarceration. That's the U.S. Gulag, where 1 out of every 3 African men is going to be tied up into prison in their lifetime. So there's no way that they can have, that they can have top security clearances. It's never going to happen, and they're not going to hire Africans, and we know that, and the party knows that. So this is the struggle that's out there, that first of all, African people do not support what the NGA does in exposing that, and secondly, that it is about gentrification and making St. Louis white, and it is now 50% African, and more Africans are being pushed out into the county, and it's all tied together. First of all, there's a lot more we can say, and I know we don't have a lot of time, but I would like to have a whole show on this, because and perhaps have President Columbine on, because it's so insidious, and it's tied to the ward reduction, to cut the wards in half so that African workers can't afford to run for office anymore. It's tied to the city-county merger, which is to make St. Louis County and city one big thing, one big entity, and it's tied to the fact that they're saying that you don't have to live in St. Louis to be a cop in St. Louis now. They're just changing that, and they're going to bring in, because this NGA is going to have a literal army. In fact, it's going to have its own police, highly militarized police force of its own, because it's, of course, the CIA type thing. So this today actually was the groundbreaking, the symbolic groundbreaking of this, where they're going to start building, and they're supposed to be finished in 5 years. This is going to be a huge facility, the biggest building west of the Mississippi. And so it's going to take them 5 years. In 5 years, they, will be their opportunity to get out, because this movement is really powerful. And so yesterday was like a so-called meet and greet with the community at a church, not just around the corner from the NGA site. And so PETA was out there holding a demonstration and a press conference, sent out stuff, and that Channel 6 or Channel 4 that we just watched came, and NPR came, and I think possibly the St. Louis Post-Dispatch was out there as well. But, some of the media came and actually interviewed President Columbine, Other people have joined this. Some people, actually a couple of North Americans who did live on the site and who were pushed out, and an indigenous man from El Salvador, Gustavo, has joined these demonstrations. His family was pushed out of a house there as well, and he's really powerful. So we're just finding that the African community, I mean, you should have seen it today with the press statement, and today was the groundbreaking, so we were across the street from the ceremony that had the governor, the mayor, all the assemblymen, even Schiff from the Trump thing, from the Trump inquiry thing, was there. I mean, it was just, it was just this big, sickening, horrible thing. And, we were out there chanting, baby killers, murderers, the North Side says no to the NGA must go, and all this kind of stuff. And it was really, really powerful yesterday and today. And we're finding incredible support, not only from the African community, but from the white community as well. This group that's sort of been protesting, people who used to live there, these white people who kind of do this little prayer vigil every Sunday night. So you're like, we really unite with your demands. You're so articulate. You're telling T'Challa and President Columbine, you're just laying out everything. We agree with everything that you're saying. And so just to say that the four demands are the NGA must go, return the land to the community, reparations to the African community, and genuine economic development to the African working class. So, it's on, it's going to be growing, it's going to be a profound social media, and NGA is gotta go. Uhuru.
Yes. Uhuru. Thank you, Chairwoman Penny Hess of the African People's Solidarity Committee, for that inspiring update and analysis from the front lines of St. Louis. It's really inspiring to hear this action being led by the International People's Democratic Uhuru movement, and also that there are North Americans or white people who oppose this and support these demands, and see that it's in their interests to support reparations and self-determination for African people. So we really appreciate that. So, comrades, we have not much time, so let's go ahead and see how this interlocks with the question of Donald J. Trump. Anytime you go online to look at the newspaper and find out what might be going on in some place like St. Louis or La Paz, Bolivia, you see the newspaper, you see another blaring headline about the Trump impeachment inquiries. Chairwoman Penny Hess, could you give us some clarity on that?
Well, I'm going to turn it over to Comrade Jesse, because the Trump impeachment is obviously used to cover over what's really going on, which is, as Chairman Omali Shatella says, a struggle between contending sectors of the white ruling class. And it's just so droning on and on. It's like they obscure the facts. And so I know, Jesse, Comrade Jesse, you've been following this story, so give us a brief summation of what's going on.
Uhuru, Chairman Penny.
Yeah.
I'll do my best here. I've been following it to the extent that sometimes when I have insomnia, I put it on because it's very boring to watch and it helps me fall asleep. But I attempted to do a little bit of research to try to sum it up, because it can be very, very confusing, and every time you look at it, every time I look at the news and I see another headline about the impeachment, I feel like it's the same headline, just kind of reworded, like Trump and Ukraine impeachment inquiry. Okay, I think I've seen that headline 100 times, but occasionally like Roger Stone or something will come out about him, and then there was Paul Manafort before him, and that one of them died or something. Anyway, I don't know what. It's very, very confusing, but let's just boil it down to its essence, because it's actually pretty simple what's going on. So what we'll do is we'll talk about the facts of what's going on with the impeachment inquiry, and then we can put it in the context of the analysis of Chairman Omali Shatella, who wrote quite extensively about the Trump phenomenon in his book Vanguard, The Advanced Attachment of the African Revolution. So, first of all, what's happening with the impeachment inquiry is that Donald Trump is being accused of trying to involve the president of Ukraine in influencing the outcome of the 2020 presidential election. Now, the way that he's being accused of doing that is that supposedly in July, Trump called Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, to congratulate him on having been elected. And during the course of that phone conversation, he said or suggested, supposedly, to Zelensky that he should investigate some of the allegations regarding improprieties and corruption involving Hunter Biden, the son of Joe Biden, and an energy company in Ukraine. Okay? So, coincidentally, that same week, Trump withheld $391 million in military funding from the government of Ukraine. So there's they're trying to draw a connection between those two things and say basically that Trump was bribing the government of Ukraine and saying like, you guys, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours with $391 million, and saying you should dig up some dirt on Biden or else I'm not going to give you your guns. Is basically what people are saying Trump was doing. So because of that phone call, which Trump released the transcript and said, look, I'm innocent, and now the transcript is being used against him as evidence in the impeachment inquiry. But basically, because of that phone call, it's basically the sequel to Russia, Russiagate, where it was all about Trump working with Vladimir Putin to fix the election because supposedly Russian hackers leaked Hillary Clinton's emails. So because supposedly Russian hackers did the people of this country a service by showing us the truth about Hillary Clinton, that proves that they meddled in the U.S. presidential election and helped Donald Trump get elected. Anyway, this is basically the sequel to that. It's really a bunch of silliness, and I think the important thing to keep in mind is that there are no good guys in this situation. It's not big, bad, fascist Donald Trump who's working with the Ruskies on the one hand, and the wonderful Nancy Pelosi and the liberal establishment on the other hand. It's all the white ruling class. It's conflict. It's war happening within the imperialist bourgeoisie, and that's what it's about. And we can talk more about that as well.
And so something that might help us, our viewers, to understand better what's going on both with the Trump impeachment inquiries is what's going on with Ukraine.
Yeah.
And what is this entity that claims to be representing the Ukrainian people? Jesse, can you tell our listeners who this current regime is, what its background is?
Absolutely. I think that's a very important question. So some of you may remember in 2014, there was a lot of hullabaloo about Vladimir Putin and the Russians going in and invading Ukraine and basically annexing and occupying Crimea. That was the big thing at that time where, meanwhile, the United States under Obama is bombing people all over the world and going in and killing Gaddafi and killing people in Syria and killing people in Iraq and Afghanistan. Now, all of a sudden, the tyrant that is invading countries is Russia, and everyone was really upset about that, in the bourgeois establishment, in the media. And, just a quick point about that, like my family, on my dad's side, I always grew up hearing, oh yeah, we're Russians, right? We were Russians from Ukraine. So it's really not, invading. I mean, there's a lot of argument in favor of the fact that Ukraine was historically part of Russia. But anyway, that's another discussion. But the point is, the reason why that was happening was because the United States was actually backing forces inside of Ukraine to overthrow the government of Ukraine. Not because the government of Ukraine was some progressive socialist government, because far from it, but because of the fact that, among other things, including wanting to feast upon the resources there, which obviously Hunter Biden's energy company, among many others, all of their children seem to be in Ukraine. What's his name? It wasn't Jared Kushner going over there at one point, and they're all over there trying to get access to resources. But also the president, Yanukovych, who was the president of Ukraine at the time, had refused to sign a European Union association agreement. So the people who were marching in the streets calling for the downfall of Yanukovych, their slogan was, "Ukraine is Europe." So they wanted Ukraine to be more deeply integrated into the European Union, and Yanukovych wasn't interested in doing that and was building more of an alliance with Russia. So then they started sending in actual neo-Nazi militias, and I'm not using that term dramatically the way a lot of liberals do, like, it's a Nazi. Like, they were actually self-proclaimed neo-Nazi militias that were backed by the United States that were involved in overthrowing Yanukovych and the government of Ukraine. Wow. So that's how this guy got into power. That's how the current government of Ukraine came to be. And just a quick note about that, that, you know, because we were talking before the show, and while, you know, obviously there is some tension going on right now between Trump and the president there, who, by the way, the current president of Ukraine is a former TV star with no previous political experience. So
Zelensky.
So Trump probably felt some kinship with him on those grounds at least. But anyway,
Right.
but he, you know, even though Trump has funded the government of Ukraine, has been supportive to them, the fact that now this tension is happening and all of the stuff regarding Russia and all of this is symptomatic of something that Chairman Omali Shatella explained. Because, you know, most of us, when we look at Trump, without the analysis of African internationalism, you just see a crazy orange billionaire, you know, going around saying crazy things, and that's the only analysis that you have.
And journalists with their hair on fire.
Right,
just
exactly.
jumping out windows. And
Exactly. But Chairman Omali Shatella explained, like, no, that's not what's going on. That Trump is part of the same crisis of imperialism as Brexit, you know, and all of this is happening, that it's part of the coming apart of what he refers to as the Atlanticist alliance. That was basically the capitalist agreement and the main arrangement made between capitalist powers after the Second Imperialist War, referred to usually as World War II. The U.S. becomes the dominant power in the world, and in order to try to create peaceful cooperation between the major bloodlusting, you know, white European imperial powers in North America as well as in Western Europe, the creation of NATO and the, you know, strengthening of the European Union, other things were forged in order to create this Atlanticist alliance. That's what the chairman talks about extensively in Vanguard, his political report to the 7th Congress. And that's what's happening. It's part of the crisis of imperialism. It's the fracturing of an imperialist social system whose unity and cohesion rests upon the oppression and colonization of Africans and Arabs and indigenous people and the colonized peoples of the world. So it is actually the intensification of the resistance of oppressed peoples around the world that is causing that whole thing to go into disarray, and for all of the den of thieves to start, you know, wielding their switchblades at each other's throats, instead of being able to come together and agree on how to divide up the spoils of the world. So that's basically what we're seeing, and I do want to encourage people, if you are interested in going more deeply into that, you should get Chairman Omali Shatella's book, Vanguard, because it contains the only analysis that makes any sense on this and many other issues.
Thank you for that overview, Jesse. That was really important to hear, and you know, it can really make your head spin when you're seeing this in the bourgeois media, that it puts these domestic politics front and center instead of the real questions. So real questions like what happened in Bolivia. So we wanted to remind people that this is a fundraiser for the Black Power Blueprint Project, a project in St. Louis that is currently developing dual and contending power, self-determination, and economic development in the hands of the African working class. We have a goal of $500 tonight. If you'd like to support that, you can go to blackpowerblueprint.org and donate generously now. We encourage you to do that. If you're a white person listening, we encourage you to do that in the name of reparations to African people. So we want to thank everyone who's tuning in tonight, and we have more coming up from Jesse and Penny. And as I was saying, if you appreciate this analysis, if you've noticed that there's something wrong in the news, something wrong with a country that we live in, a so-called nation that's able to just declare an elected leader invalid and remove them with a military that it owns, as we learned last week talking to Benjamin Prado. This was a U.S.-backed military coup that happened in the midst of all this nonsense around Trump's impeachment. If you appreciate that analysis that you've heard tonight, it's because we're able to use the analysis of African internationalism. This is not something we sat around because we're smart white guys and came up with. This is a worldview from the African working class, not the white ruling class. Yeah. This is the worldview of the African People's Socialist Party, developed by Chairman Omali Yeshitela. This program is in support of the Black Power Blueprint, the powerful project led by Black Star Industries of the party in St. Louis that has transformed abandoned properties on the north side of St. Louis, which is 98% African, where most of its residents live in poverty. The Black Power Blueprint with such projects as the Uhuru House with an Aquaba Hall, just like the beautiful Uhuru House that we're speaking from right now in St. Petersburg, is in St. Louis. It's a community event space at 4101 West Florissant Avenue, which was transformed from a house with no floor, no back wall, into a state-of-the-art center used for weddings, repasts, graduations, birthdays, and political and community events. And across the street from the Uhuru House is the Black Power Blueprint outdoor event space, which is progressing rapidly. These are programs creating political and economic power in the hands of the African working class there in St. Petersburg, there in St. Louis, where you are, Chairwoman Penny, here in St. Petersburg, Florida, and around the world. So please go to blackpowerblueprint.org and donate if you believe in self-determination for African people, for all human beings. It's up to us to unite with paying reparations to African people and return the stolen resources that support the way of life we take for granted. Help us raise $500 tonight by going to blackpowerblueprint.org. And we're going to move on now and come back to that question of self-determination with respect to Bolivia, coups and uprisings. So, Chairwoman Penny Hess, we are Uhuru. We are honored to have you on so we can talk about Comrade Evo Morales, who was recently, he was the first indigenous president of Bolivia, I believe for over 15 years, and a self-proclaimed socialist. He was pushed out of power by a U.S.-backed military coup, and the U.S. media has portrayed it as a popular protest movement against Morales, which removed him. This is not the first time in recent history that a coup has been masked behind a contrived uprising. Could you talk a bit to us about how this one spot, or how does one spot the difference, rather, between a legitimate people's uprising and a neo-colonial coup?
Uhuru. Well, I'm glad you raised this. And again, I want to say that the only reason that I could answer this is because I study the writings and the understandings of Chairman Omali Yeshitela, and he has put out, of course, quite a bit on this. I know that, I read the New York Times every day, and the New York Times basically covers what's happening in Hong Kong. There's been these demonstrations there, which is obviously the only reason that the U.S. media would be covering it is because, they want to attack China. So, that we can't believe anything that they're saying about what that is and all. But there was a recent article, November 22nd, in the Wall Street Journal, and it was called Global Wave of Protest Rattled Government. From Latin America to the Middle East to Hong Kong, messaging apps are giving wing to massive demonstrations against the status quo, which, by the way, I meant to send this out, the party's ad department, because it has these apps that help you build demonstrations, which I really think that we should look into. But in any case, it's saying that, and of course, every once in a while you get glimpses of it, usually on alternative media, that in Chile, in Bolivia, Lebanon, Spain, Haiti, huge demonstrations are going on. And of course in Iraq right now, Afghanistan, Yemen, Iran. I mean, there's so much going on around the world, but we don't hear that. There's not much at all that covers it. But I mean, even, in Spain and the Catalan, separation movement, and just, so many places. But of course, what they're doing is equating all of these things, including Hong Kong, and they are, there is something that the chairman Omali Yeshitela has described as the uneasy equilibrium, the instability of the ability of the U.S. government and imperialism to rule in the same old way, that it's being attacked, including by other forces who want to contend for, being the leader of capitalism, and including forces that were once colonized or oppressed or very poor, like Russia and China and other places now that are serious contenders, and in fact are very rapidly overtaking the U.S.'s ability to be the wealthiest country in the entire world. So, this is a reality that they are, that imperialism is under assault by resistance. And the chairman has summed this up as by resistance everywhere, and instability, can't count on what's going to be carried out. But the fact is that all the things that are listed on this New York Times, this Wall Street Journal article are not the same, because as we know, the Hong Kong rebellions that could be instigated by the U.S. And then there's this thing called the color revolutions, which, you were talking about Ukraine, which clearly the U.S. was behind, the overturning of power that was in the camp of Russia, was clearly a U.S.-backed effort. And we've seen that in many, many places in the world. So that's always happening. But then on the other hand, you have what's going on in Chile, which is clearly the indigenous and the indigenous working class who are, they're waging real serious demonstrations. Same in Haiti. African workers are on the streets and practically paralyzing the country. And even in Bolivia, where a U.S.-backed coup or, a covert action building the so-called demonstrations of the white petty bourgeois and bourgeois population against the indigenous workers. But apparently, from what I'm seeing or catching glimpses of, there are huge demonstrations of indigenous workers going on there. So there's struggle. There's struggle in Venezuela. There's struggle, in Ecuador. There's struggle in Brazil, where the African is actually the largest African population outside of Africa. And of course, African people are catching hell there, just like any place else. But yet, I saw an interesting thing about Brazil is that something like the number of people who identified as African has increased by something like 40% in the last few years. So this African identity that is led by, the vanguard of the African working class is growing. And, it's clear that the future is in the African Revolution, which is about, as I heard a party member saying, rising up the African working class who carry all oppressed and colonized people on their shoulders. But so that's something that we have to see. But I think what's really important is that the African People's Socialist Party, as the vanguard, is the only force in the world that is not about a reform, not about finding a way that oppressed and colonized people can live with this system, sort of make friends with it or figure out a way to make things better so that they can live with it. But it's about overturning imperialism and regaining the unity of all African people, regaining the land mass and the resources of Africa, regaining all of the stolen wealth and the value of the stolen labor and brilliance in terms of reparations as a revolutionary demand. It's the only one that's doing that, and it's the only one, because there are a lot of people out there who say, oh, I'm a socialist, I'm a revolutionary, I'm an anti-imperialist. I mean, I hear people say this all the time, but yet they're not calling for and doing anything that will really bring about the overturning and the total demise of U.S. imperialism. Only the African People's Socialist Party is doing that, and that there is a science to it. And, if you see so many presentations and so many different kinds of settings, especially with other forces, you see Chairman O'Malley Yeshitela very patiently and very, very scientifically laying out, no, there is a science to revolution. There is a science to socialism. You can't just declare yourself a socialist. There is a definition. And it requires the leadership of a party of the working class. And of course, what we're talking about is that colonized peoples are the pedestal upon which the system rests. So therefore, it is a party of the colonized working class. And specifically, all of those would be led by the African working class, which we see is the African People's Socialist Party. So, when you have countries in different parts of the world, and they call themselves socialists, but they never destroyed the colonial capitalist state apparatus. It's still in power, and they took arms away, and they never armed the people, then there's no way they can win. And so today there might be, rebellions of indigenous workers in Chile, but 40 years ago, there was Salvador Allende and the Chilean Revolution. But Allende refused to arm the workers. And boom, in a very short period of time, the U.S. came in, bombed them, killed Allende, overturned that, and installed Pinochet, who was, in for many years and rewrote the Constitution. So even now, he's virtually still in power. There's this U.S.-backed kind of neo-colonialism that's in there now. So, it's just sort of like, well, at any given time, the rebellions are going on. But one day it could be a so-called revolutionary, but another day it could be overturned. And, it's U.S.-backed. And it's just like this cycle that can't be broken unless you have this science of African internationalism and a party of democratic centralism and cadre that are prepared to go about what it takes to destroy imperialism and parasitic capitalism once and for all. And that is the understanding that capitalism was born on the enslavement of African people and the genocide of the indigenous people and the colonization and the majority of the planet Earth, which made Europe and white people everywhere not only wealthy, powerful, and the greatest perpetrators of violence that ever existed on the planet Earth, but also the richest, most prosperous, population that's ever lived on this planet, as a whole population. So, I just want to say that, and the chairman has so brilliantly laid this out. So recently, in the call to the upcoming African People's Socialist Party plenary, following the first plenary following the party's 7th Congress, which was held a little over a year ago in St. Louis, the chairman wrote, well, this question, what is socialism? And the chairman said, quote, "We are saying that words alone are not enough. Declaring oneself a socialist, a revolutionary, or anti-imperialist is meaningless in and of itself. The achievement of socialism can only come about through the defeat of capitalism. To be a genuine socialist is to be engaged in struggle to defeat capitalism that owes its existence to the success to colonial slavery. To be a genuine socialist is to engage in the struggle to destroy the colonial pedestal upon which the capitalist parasite lives and thrives. To be a socialist in an era of colonial capitalist rule is to be a revolutionary consumed by the struggle to replace the cruel colonial capitalist state with the state of the liberated, armed African working class."
Beautiful.
That is just so clear,
Yeah.
so powerful. And, the chairman did a powerful video in which he summed up the coup that overturned and the resignation of, elected president of Bolivia, Evo Morales. And it's brilliant. I really call on people to go to the page of Chairman Omali Shatella on Facebook, where you should be able to find that. It's very brilliant. It's very principled. He's laying it out. And, he's saying that, among other things, besides the failure to destroy the colonial state apparatus that exists there, that, there has to be the recognition that it's not just that he lost favor, but that there's a class struggle inside of that country, just as there are everywhere. And, that a socialist has to uphold the working class. And it's really, really powerful. And of course, we denounce that coup. We join the African People's Socialist Party in denouncing what the U.S. government does all around the world and inside this country with its counterinsurgency, killing, slaughtering, murdering, using any possible kind of means to destroy a people's revolution. But the chairman is intent on bringing the science of revolution and what it's going to take to African workers all around the world and to oppressed and colonized peoples and to white people. That's why the African People's Solidarity Committee was formed, to extend the African Revolution into the belly of the beast, into the colonizer population, and that's what we're doing. So I just salute African People's Socialist Party for giving us this clarity to take the world off the roller coaster of just protest and to give back the science of revolution that was destroyed as the ideological attack on the African Revolution and revolutions on this planet that have gone two generations and more without a force fighting for revolution except for the party. And the chairman has so single-handedly brought this question to the world stage. So I salute Chairman Omali Shatella, just incredible, brilliant integrity and just fortitude and consistency of this message and this struggle in the face of every single possible kind of attack that you could ever imagine. And I know that the future is strong. African people are going to win, and I see it. Millions and millions and millions of people are going to come alive with the spirit of revolution under the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party and the understanding that the world, the hands of the future of the planet Earth is in the hands of the African and colonized working class of this world. And that parasitic capitalism has brought this globe to near extinction. Capitalism has to go. And when we see a world in which true socialism exists, in which oppressed and colonized people have power, when their genius is unleashed, and they will lead in solving these dire and pressing problems affecting the entire planet, we will see a world in which no one lives at the expense of anyone else. And there will be genuine peace. There will be the time for the planet and human beings to regenerate, to heal, to create a world that is healthy, that is productive, that is about life and not about death. So salute the African People's Socialist Party. Uhuru.
Uhuru. A big salute
Let's
to
give a
you,
round of applause
Chairman
for that.
Hess.
Uhuru. I really want to appreciate that that statement, and I really like the analogy of what you said about how the chairman has taken us off the roller coaster of protest, because a roller coaster, has ups and downs and adrenaline rush and it's thrilling, but you end up where you started.
Yep.
Once the roller coaster's over,
Yeah.
and you go around again, and then you go around again, and the chairman is really saying, like, to what end?
Right.
And it's not going to be an endless cycle of, somewhat progressive government gets elected, then U.S.-backed military coup. All right, then another U.S. Progressive government, then U.S. military, back and forth forever, and it's just a vicious cycle. And, of course, it doesn't go on forever, because if capitalism is not destroyed, as you said, it will destroy the Earth itself and humanity itself. So the future of the planet Earth is at stake, and of human beings, and all life on this planet is at stake. And I really want to unite with the analysis of Chairman Amalia Shatella that you put forward so powerfully in that statement, Chairwoman Penny Hess, and also really want to echo the call for people to watch the chairman's video. Go to, I think it was from Chairman Amalia Shatella's Facebook page, that's correct, and watch his statement about Evo Morales. Because what I heard from what the chairman was saying is that, yes, we denounce the coup, but it's not enough to just denounce the coup. We have to build the African revolution, and for us, that means we have to fight for reparations. We have to build white solidarity with black power. We have to build the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, and we have to do everything we can to go into the white community and unleash all the stolen resources back into the African liberation movement, including the Black Power blueprint.
Yes.
So as quiet as it's kept, every contribution that we make towards the Black Power blueprint is a contribution towards the liberation of the indigenous people of Bolivia and all oppressed and fighting and exploited peoples throughout the world who are in a struggle for their very lives and for their future.
Uhuru,
Uhuru.
Did you want to
go ahead, James? I just wanted to say really quick. I just wanted to say, I appreciate that, and also that the African People's Socialist Party is not waiting till they seize power, till African people seize power. They're building this now, and that's what the Black Power Blueprint represents. It represents the seizure of what's called dual and contending state power, where African people claim their own power. The whole reparations demand returns resources directly to the revolution, so that it's not counting on charity or somebody's whim or, some kind of here or there sort of thing, but an actual ideological call by African workers for the redistribution of the wealth of the world into the hands of those who produce it. And that's the African working class, and that they are building this now. They have solved all the problems of the revolution. I recently read a essay by Che, who, after the revolution in Cuba, he was summing up that, and this was shortly after the revolution, maybe a couple of years after the revolution, and he was saying that they, they knew nothing. They won, militarily won, and drove the imperialist Batista neocolonial regime out. They took power, they destroyed the state, they did those things, but then they had no idea how to run it. They had no idea. He said, well, we named people, we named comrades to lead certain departments and certain areas of things of the economy by pointing the finger. We would just say, oh, you do that, and you do that. And Che himself was assigned to lead the economic the financial and economic department of the government of Cuba, which he knew nothing about. So, he's saying that they were facing that, and they had to really undergo tremendous, and they had to rely, the working class had to rely on the petty bourgeoisie who knew how to do it. He was saying, well, yeah, we took over the state, but the whole apparatus of the economy didn't stop, because it's just like this big, slow, lumbering machine, and it has a sort of its own kind of motion, and it just sort of, chugged on, but we didn't know how to change it. And the party is solving that. It's putting an economy in place now. It's winning Africans as cadre to take over leadership of various aspects of this movement, which include the financial, the economic development, the political front, the women's front, just all the different fronts of this are in place, the solidarity front. And it's so powerful. It's incredible. Uhuru.
Uhuru. Yes, absolutely. And Jamie, go ahead.
No, I just want to unite with you. It was an amazing and really inspiring overview of what went on and what our responsibility is here as white people in North America to support the self-determination projects of the Black Power blueprint that the African People's Socialist Party has so brilliantly laid out as a way to start seizing some of that power that has been monopolized, has been taken away from African people, starting with their seizure from Africa itself, their separation from the resources of Africa. And so if this is something that you see in the world, we're talking directly to you. We really appreciate everyone who has tuned in tonight. And if this is something that you've seen several times before, it's still very much squarely on our shoulders to carry through this responsibility to raise the reparations, to raise the material resources. Because at every stage that the African independence movement finds itself at a hurdle, it's often some form of economic hurdle. And where is the economic power to do what must be done to achieve independence in the lifetime of Chairman Omali Yeshitela? It's the resources, and we know where the resources have historically been looted. Like you were talking about, Chairwoman Penny Hess, about the inertia of the Cuban economy and the attempt to change that. There's an incredible inertia of the amount of wealth locked up in white communities throughout this country and throughout this world. And what we are doing here as the Uhuru Solidarity Movement under the leadership of the African People's Solidarity Committee, the African People's Socialist Party, is building a culture of reparations. And you can be part of that. You can be part of that by going to blackpowerblueprint.org and donating as much as you're able to donate tonight, by calling a friend, a family member, someone maybe you haven't talked to in a while. Maybe you're at a stalemate over the impeachment inquiry. This would be a great, very tangible subject to bring up to any family that might be in for this colonial holiday that we're about to endure.
Yep.
Indeed.
You can let them know about this incredibly optimistic vision for the future that does allow us to not just sink into cynicism and reaction, that allows us to see a way forward with the peoples of the world, not living above and alienated from them as happens in colonialism, in white power. We haven't been part of humanity. This is our option. This is our ticket back to the rest of the world.
Yes.
So if that's something that you unite with, we also want to let everyone know that there is a science to revolution and there is a science to reparations. And one of the tactics that the African People's Solidarity Committee and Uhuru Solidarity Movement has used is the Giving Tuesday model.
Before we get to that,
yes,
I want to thank some of the people who have donated tonight. First I want to thank Chairwoman Penny Hess and Jamie Simpson, who have been very excellent on this show tonight. So let's give them a round of applause.
Hooray, Chairwoman Penny Hess.
And I would like to thank Jamie also for donating $20 to the program tonight. Ali Ayello put in $50. Shout out to Ali Ayello. And Casey Mackey put in $25. Uhuru to Casey Mackey in St. Louis, which means that we raised $95 of our goal. So please go ahead and contribute, blackpowerblueprint.org. And don't delay. Go ahead and do that right now. So if I may say a few things about Giving Tuesday. Okay, so the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, as Jamie mentioned, is embarking upon a magnificent campaign. Actually, right now, it has already begun, and it's going to really crescendo on December 3rd, which is a national day of giving called Giving Tuesday. And this is something that was kicked off in 2012 as a kind of counter to the consumerism of the day after Thanksgiving that they refer to as Black Friday, right? So this was like, that's a day to buy stuff, and this is a day to give. And people are encouraged to give to nonprofits, to donate to charity organizations. So we are jumping into the fray and saying, for the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, Giving Tuesday is Reparations Tuesday.
Yes.
And that these resources are not ours to give, but ours to give back to the Black Power Blueprint and the African People's Education and Defense Fund as reparations and solidarity with African economic self-reliance and political independence, which is what we've been talking about all night. So towards that end, the Reparations Tuesday campaign calls on you to donate on Giving Tuesday, which is December 3rd, to donate, and even if you can, to donate at 8 a.m. on the dot. Go on Facebook and donate to APEDF on December 3rd, Tuesday, 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on the dot in order to get some of the matching fund that Facebook has made available to organizations that who contribute at exactly that time. Mm-hmm. But the campaign for Reparations Tuesday is much bigger than a call for people to donate on December 3rd, because we are building a global day of reparations to African people. We want to use December 3rd, Reparations Tuesday, to build a massive movement around reparations to African people on that day that just explodes all over the world on that day. So if you watched this show tonight and thought, wow, that was great, I could have watched another hour, maybe even another 2 hours, maybe even another 23 hours, well, you're in luck, because next Tuesday, we will be beginning our broadcast at 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we won't be stopping until 7 a.m. the next day. Wow. We are going live for 24 hours from St. Pete and from St. Louis, and we're going to have statements from people in London, from people all over the world who are involved in building the global day of reparations to African people called Reparations Tuesday, Giving Tuesday for the Black Power Blueprint. So that's going to be broadcast on Uhuru Solidarity Movement YouTube and Facebook page next Tuesday, December 3rd, from 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time to 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So that's going to include things like Chairman Omali Yeshitela himself will be speaking on that, Deputy Chair Onizane Yeshitela, Chairwoman Penny Hess, Director Akile Anai of the Agitation and Propaganda Department, who ran for office here in St. Petersburg this past year and secured over 6,000 votes for a platform of making the South Side black again, will be on for a panel called Tales from the Campaign Trail, talking about that, as well as others who were involved in that campaign. And so many other things. We're going to have revolutionary music. We're going to play music from the Cuban Revolution, from the African Revolution, including the Uhuru Movement, artists in the Uhuru Movement who have made some incredible music. We're going to do a whole panel on the culture of reparations and hear from people like Jackson Hollingsworth, who is a talented songwriter and singer, who's going to be talking about building a culture of reparations and the very well-known Reparations Now song that Jackson has created. We're going to have a panel called DJs for Reparations, because the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, this is the genius of the African People's Socialist Party. White people hanging out, dancing, doing dance parties all over this country are now doing that for reparations to the black community. That is brilliant. So we have people like Casey Mackey, Declan, Carbon, and others that from Boston, St. Louis, New York, who are involved in throwing dance parties that are fundraisers that raise thousands of dollars for reparations to the Black Power Blueprint. They're going to be on doing a panel. We're going to have people from St. Louis, President Columbaye and Danette, to Charwa Masimba, and others, many others. I'm not naming every single person because it's a 24-hour telethon, so we would be here for another 40 minutes if I did. But it's going to be incredible. That's next Tuesday. And last but not least, if you have not already, please go to facebook.com if you have a Facebook account and go to APEDF. And when you go to the African People's Education and Defense Fund Facebook page, there will be a little button that says create a fundraiser. Okay, click that button and make a Giving Tuesday fundraiser. If 100 people signed up to do Giving Tuesday fundraisers for APEDF, the Black Power Blueprint, and raised an average of $300 each, we would raise $30,000 that is urgently needed by the Black Power Blueprint to continue moving at this rapid pace that it's developing right now, and building the marketplace and building all the other projects that it has on the horizon and that are coming into fruition as we speak. So if you haven't done that already, go ahead and do it. It's easy. Trust me, you will be surprised at how quickly your friends and family see, oh wow, my cousin is really passionate about this project. I'm gonna look into it. There's videos you can post, and they throw a donation, and people that you would never expect to support something like this will come out and show their support because of the stance that you take and the call that you make on your Facebook page for people to contribute. Mm-hmm. So those are the things I wanted to say, and I also wanted to announce that we received another contribution from Penny Hess of $20. Uhuru to Chairwoman Penny. As well as Jackson Hollingsworth for $5. Uhuru to Jackson. That means that we raised $120 towards the Black Power Blueprint tonight. Uhuru. And you can continue donating at blackpowerblueprint.org. And I know we've got to close out soon, Jesse, but you know, it occurs to me this may be something more for the folks that are listening and that tune in to the Uhuru Solidarity Movement web shows. But during this fundraising, Giving Tuesday, from December 3rd to December 4th, this will cover the exact time of the 50th anniversary of when the Chicago Police Department and FBI snuck into the headquarters of the Black Panther Party of Illinois, and murdered Fred Hampton. And we will be talking about that actually on the dot of the moment when it happened. Wow. We will be discussing that and showing speeches from the incredible Fred Hampton on the telethon.
This is so appropriate for that day. The slogan when I first encountered this movement was complete the Black Power movement of the 60s.
Yes.
Complete the Black Revolution of the 60s. And this is exactly what we're addressing when we're supporting dual and contending power in the hands of the African working class. So really excited about Giving Tuesday, and really excited about the blackpowerblueprint.org. I'd like to donate another $10 tonight.
All right.
And if you're out there and you want to, I really appreciate everyone who's donated even a second time tonight. Anything you can do to help us reach this goal is deeply appreciated.
So we're going to be closing out, but Chairwoman Penny Hess, any final comments you wanted to make before we close out this web show tonight?
Uhuru, well, I really appreciate the show tonight. It was really fun and interesting to sum up the world, and I hope we can do it again under the leadership of Chairman Omali Shatella. And I'm really looking forward to the 24-hour marathon next week. A week from tonight, we'll be doing that. And, you know, we've got to meet our goal of raising $30,000 for the Black Power Blueprint in this campaign. So I just really appreciate that. I appreciate everybody who's donated. And let's really get the word out there for next week to have a very wide and broad audience.
Uhuru. Indeed. Uhuru. And Jesse, before we close out tonight, could we acknowledge our esteemed studio audience here?
One of the best studio audiences we've ever had.
Absolutely. I just want can we acknowledge the presence of Director Akile Anayi of the African People's Socialist Party, our leadership. Kyle Weiss, our fantastic engineer. Jackson Hollingsworth, comrade. And Amanda Carlozzi. Uhuru, thank you so much for being here. And thank you to everyone who is out there joining us tonight.
Yes.
And we encourage you to be back here at 7 a.m. next Tuesday for the 24-hour reparations-thon.
Get your cup of coffee and hunker down for the 24-hour telethon. Uhuru.
Uhuru. Unity through
reparations.
All right. Thanks, Chairwoman Penny. Uhuru.
Thank